Hello and welcome to Padlock Picking. This is the first film in hopefully a quite successful series, ongoing series. My name's Simon, by the way. Right, my history with locks and padlock picking. As a child, I do remember picking open things like diary padlocks with little wires and things like that, and once you managed to do that, it was quite a special feeling that you've cracked a lock, something that was meant to keep you out. Probably the second time I remember picking a lock as a kid, as a teenager, was in England, where I live. It's at Christmas time when we have Christmas crackers. You get sometimes junk inside the crackers. Well, one of the common things you find is a little set of screwdrivers, 3 screwdrivers. And I do remember using a set of these screwdrivers to pick the lock on the caravan that we had at that time. And also recently I've used a similar set of screwdrivers from what would have been a Christmas cracker to open a cash box. So yeah, different history. But back in 2013 I trained as a locksmith. I was working for myself, self-employed, fitting locks, picking locks, opening safes, and then about 3 years later, due to ill health, injuries and family, I decided to stop working for myself, and then I eventually stopped doing locks. I had quite an extensive amount of kit for opening all sorts of locks. Obviously not just padlocks, I was doing Euro locks, Yale type locks, cylinder locks, all sorts of different things. And a guy drove down from Manchester, which is about a 2-hour drive, to buy everything from me, and he was a trainee locksmith. He was going on courses, things like that. Well, I knew a locksmith in the local town, and I bought some equipment from him. I bought some online. I learnt a bit from him, I learnt a bit myself, and I learnt a bit online as well. But what I did do is, when I sold my tools, is I kept these. This is a Goso. I think this was probably some of the first kit that I bought, a Goso lockpick set with all sorts of different picks in here. Originally it would come with these 2 tension wrenches, and you can see I've got my homemade tension wrenches. I used to make my own tools as well. These are some rakes that I bought. Just open the other side up. Yeah, you can see a couple of picks that I was given, because as well as doing lock picking, domestic and things like that, I also was involved in lock sport, where I would build locks. I would hand file keys. Basically, I'd sit at a bench with a little small vise that I've kept that, and I would file each pin into a key and make very, very difficult locks for other people like me, or like I used to be, to open. But the reason I've decided to do this and to get back into lockpicking and show you guys is where I work now. Part of the job, we have had times where we've needed to open locks, and I thought, oh, alright, I'll take my tools to work, and the more locks I've opened, the more I've enjoyed it. So just recently I bought jiggler keys again. I've got all 3 sets in this one, and I've got a spare large set of jiggler keys, which have come in handy for quite a few locks. So right, let's get on to talking about a lock. Okay, oh, just before I do, I also kept this. I think that's a spark plug feeler gauge, which is actually very handy. You can hopefully see that I've ground away part of the feeler gauge to make it a bit more pointy. This helps with decoding combination padlocks, safes and things like that, because I've got lots of different sized pieces of metal to be able to slide into the lock. I've opened quite a lot of safes and locks at work with just this one homemade tool. Right, this lock is a warded lock. It's bought from a local pound shop. I did have two of these. This is the short shackle, shackle, I think I've said that right. And I did have a larger one. Now the larger one in one technique is easier to open, but basically if you buy one of these for £1, they're very cheap. Unfortunately, if you go to places like Skegness, you see a lot of I don't know, the elderly or just people with caravans use these type of locks on their sheds for their mobility scooters, mountain bikes, that sort of thing, when really ought to be upgrading their security. Don't lock up your precious valuables with a lock that cost £1, because you're not really getting much for your money in terms of security, because the bad guys out there are going to look things up and find out how to open them. Okay, so first off, there is let me think now, 1, 2, 3, 4 ways of opening this lock. Okay, number 1, you would take the key from the lock, like you can see I've done here, and where the wards would have gone in to this lock, you file it right down to the middle, then you file it right down this side. This key now is basically a lockpick. I did used to have warded lockpicks, but they got sold with all the other tools. I would like some again, but it's expensive. The tools to build up the set that I had is expensive, and I can't afford to do that in one go. So maybe over time, as I'm showing you locks, I will start to get a few tools again. Okay, sometimes sliding this into the lock, the mechanism for the lock, the spring that you are opening to allow the lock to come up, most of the time on these cheap ones it's right at the top there. You see the dimple there? That's where the tip of the key stops. Sometimes on some Squire warded locks, it's about here. It's just a case of taking your key, and you can see the plates there and the shape of this key. So I'm trying to do this looking through my camera. It's gone in, it's gone all the way in, it's up to this shoulder on the key, and I simply just twist it, and there we go. So we'll take that out, lock that up, there we go, in with the key all the way up to the shoulder line, and you saw that there. Okay, that's method number 1. Method number 2, because you can see there's plenty of room either side when you wiggle this shackle, you can shim this. Shimming is where you take a thin piece of metal, like the metal from a feeler gauge, a Coke can, or you buy actual shims. You press down on the lock, slide the shim in, turn it to the inside, both the sides, and then you can pull the lock open. Another way to open this lock, which I can't also show you because it needs to be fixed to something, like on a hasp and staple, is basically you pull the lock while it's fixed to something, and with something like a nylon hammer, you could use an actual hammer, you strike the lock very quickly and repeatedly like that, and the lock will pop open. The shock causes the spring-loaded mechanism to go inwards and allows the shackle to come up. Okay, this works on spring-loaded mechanisms like that's in here. So that's method. I can't get my words out. This is my first lockpicking video. I've been on YouTube quite a while actually, but I have been doing bushcraft and survival videos on a different channel, but I might talk about it another day. So yeah, so I'm not a noob to YouTube by any means. I've done a fair few hundred videos on a different channel, but talking about locks on camera, and I'm also trying to remember, because it's been a couple of years and not touching locks, and then I've gone really more back into bushcraft and things like that, and learning different things. So I've forgot a lot about locks, so doing this is going to help me jog my memory. So we've gone in through the keyway. You can also use a piece of wire, things like that, to pick these. Pretty easy. We've talked about shimming. We've talked about shocking the mechanism. Now the other method, which you can do with it just your hand, you don't have to strike it with anything. It's harder with this one, so I hope I get it all on camera and show you. But hopefully I'll be able to do it. I mean, I have done this before, showing staff at work why they shouldn't buy these cheap locks. We don't actually use these at work. I'm telling the young people that, you know, might buy this at the pound shop to lock their bicycle up when they cycle into town, just to, you know, spend that extra money and keep your bike safe. So while it's on fastened to something, my finger is now the Hassman staple. I'm going to pull backwards on the lock and wiggle it, just rocking the lock whilst pulling, and it will open. This is a lot easier with the long shackle, but I have no idea where that lock has gone. I bought the pair so I could test different bypass methods and things like that with these locks. So right, pulling the lock. There we go. I'll do that again. Okay, now it's locked. I'm going to pull the lock. And there we go. Don't trust a £1 lock to keep you safe. This rocking technique also works when the shackle has two locking levers. As you can see, this only has one, which is in there, but it will work on a double. So this is the first lock of the series. I might bring a lock home that I've used at work to show the apprentices as well. But I've still kept a box of locks in my garage from my lockpicking days and key cutting days. Some of the really good ones, unfortunately, I did give to the apprentice locksmith who bought my locks. So it would be nice to collect padlocks. Now, the reason I chose padlocks and the name padlock picking, or picking padlocks, I can't remember now what I actually chose. My children helped me decide. Obviously the more I use the name, the more I'll get used to it. Is basically the Euro house locks became very boring. You could pick those, but they became boring. The only way they became different is if people put different pins in and made them into challenge locks. I like padlocks because there's different types of padlocks, the different styles, there's different ways to bypass them. Some of the locks in the past are from memory, some of the master ones, you could literally probe a wire into the lock through the side, through the bottom, and deactivate the lock basically, and the shackle will just pull up. And also the different keyways, you can get the tubular key, the cross key, and the tibia. Oh, good grief! I'm trying to think what it's called now. It's been so many years. Yes, basically a key a bit like on an abloy lock. But like I say, I haven't got the tools for the picking abloy locks anymore. But yeah, hope this was useful to you as a starter. I look forward to doing another video. Hopefully I won't stutter as much. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.